Now, in my opinion, and most boxing fans' opinions as well, is that there are three outstanding fighters within the lightweight division. Some guys are calling these three fighters the three kings, just like the four kings in the welterweight division all those years ago. They're saying that Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, and Gervonta Davis are the three kings of the lightweight division. So I just wanted to talk about maybe some of the strengths and weaknesses of these fighters, maybe how I see a fight going between these guys, talking about their resumes and also just their recent performances. Let's start off with Devin Haney first because he's the undisputed champion. Now, Devin Haney, a couple of weeks ago, he beat Vasily Lomachenko in a very competitive fight. Now, I didn't make a post-fight review, so some of you guys are like, well, what's your thought on the fight? Who do you think won? I thought it was a very close fight and it could have gone either way. I said that, 7-5 for either fighter is a good prediction, and the fight could have even been a draw. I mean, the people who are saying that it's a robbery, I mean, I didn't think that fight was a robbery because it could have gone either way. Now, there was one scorecard where I think the judge had Haney up by like 4 or 5 rounds. That was a dodgy scorecard, but I think the 115-113 scorecard for Haney was fair, and I also thought it could have gone in Lomachenko's favor because the fight was that close and there were a lot of swing rounds. Now, I think because Lomachenko was landing some good headshots, it came off as more eye-catching to some people. That being said, Devin Haney was very consistent with his body attacks against Lomachenko through round 1 to 12, and Devin Haney also won round 12. That must be mentioned. So I think it's just mainly the headshots, the straight left hand for Loma, it was landing, and that's why a lot of people were saying, well, I actually thought Loma won and Loma dominated and he landed the cleaner and more effective punches. But if you actually look at the fight again and you watch it objectively, without the biased commentary, you'll see that it's a lot closer and that Devin Haney has a good case for winning, and also Loma had a good case for winning, and even a draw would have been a fair result. Some people will say that Devin Haney got lucky because, it sets up a fight with Gervonta Tank Davis and Shakur Stevenson, and that Haney's undefeated and they could market Haney better. Maybe, but I didn't think that Haney winning was necessarily a bad call. I thought it was a fair result. Just that one judge, I forgot the scorecard. I think it was 116, 112. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, that judge, that was a little bit too wide for my liking. But Devin Haney, he wasn't really able to get the jab going. And this is against Lomachenko, who's a southpaw. Now, Devin Haney's biggest asset is his jab. How will Devin Haney be able to implement the jab against Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Davis? I don't know. Because Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson, they're a lot more fresher. They're a lot more active. They're a lot more conditioned than someone like Lomachenko at this stage of his career. And I don't know if they're necessarily more... When I say active, I just mean that they offer, a lot more than what Lomachenko can offer, that they're a lot more dangerous. I don't mean as in they're very high-volume punchers, because Lomachenko was probably more of a high-volume puncher in contrast to Davis and Stevenson. I just mean that, they offer more of a threat to Devin Haney because they're, coming into their primes. Shakur's probably a couple years off it. Gervonta Davis at this age should be in his, physical prime. So, yeah, I just feel as though Devin Haney's got to go back to the drawing board and see, maybe how he could be more accurate with the jab, because he's going to need that jab if he wants to beat Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, I know it's hard because they're all southpaws, and it's really hard to get the jab off against a southpaw. Southpaws are used to fighting orthodox fighters, and orthodox fighters are not very used to fighting southpaws. So maybe that bothered Devin Haney. Maybe he needs a little bit more southpaw sparring, in his training camps to get used to fighting a southpaw, because his jab wasn't as effective as it has been in, other fights. Maybe because Loma is just also a high-level fighter and you need to use more stuff. But what really did impress me was his kind of right uppercut to the body. Haney landed that consistently. He was landing that through 1 round to 12, And you can clearly tell that Bill Haney and Devin Haney, that was their game plan going into Lomachenko fight, to land those body attacks. And Haney was also landing some nice left hooks, some check left hooks, some counter left hooks, on the inside. But for me, Devin Haney's biggest weaknesses, it's his punching power and it's his inside game. Devin Haney's inside game is nowhere near as polished as Shakur Stevenson's and Gervonta Tank Davis's at this stage of his career. He's going to need to work on that, because you can't just fight on the outside the entire fight. When you come up against Gervonta Davis, he's going to fight you on the inside. So if you're struggling against Lomachenko on the inside, who doesn't have the kind of power as Gervonta Tank Davis, Tank Davis can hurt you. The only caveat being for Devin Haney is that I believe Lomachenko was a lot more sophisticated than someone like a Gervonta Tank Davis. I believe that he's probably got a better punch variety. His footwork and even, his movement is better than Gervonta Tank Davis's. So Lomachenko's a lot more smooth, has probably more rhythm than Gervonta Tank Davis. But Tank Davis, after round 3, 4, and 5, when he starts to figure you out, he starts to walk you down and he lands power punches. You need to have something that's going to keep Davis off you. Now, will the jab be enough? I don't know. But, for Haney to be able to beat someone like Stevenson and Davis, he's going to need to improve his inside game. But it was a good performance from Devin Haney. And Lomachenko, that's the best fighter all three of those guys have ever fought. Either, Devin Haney himself, Shakur Stevenson, or Gervonta Davis. That's by far the toughest opponent any three of them have ever fought. So when we look at Gervonta Tank Davis, he recently beat Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is not on the level of Lomachenko, but what Tank Davis did show is he showed patience and he showed a good ability to counter. Now, we already knew Gervonta Tank Davis was, a counter puncher, and we already knew Gervonta Davis could walk people down, but I was surprised by how easy Tank Davis made it look. I thought Tank Davis would have a few issues early on, and, Ryan Garcia landed some decent power shots early on, but Ryan Garcia was too hasty, he wasn't patient, and he got countered. Tank Davis is a lot more intelligent than we give him credit for. Now, the major weakness with Gervonta Tank Davis, I think it's potentially two things. I've heard a lot about, Tank Davis isn't always in the best condition, about that his stamina isn't as good as some of the other top fighters. I don't know. But one thing I know for sure is that when Tank Davis is on the outside, he doesn't throw enough punches. He's not active. There are periods in the fight where Gervonta Tank Davis is way too inactive in a fight. If you look at the Leo Santa Cruz fight, the Mario Barrios fight, what other fights? The Rolly Romero fight. When Tank Davis is kept at distance, he doesn't do enough. He's too low volume. If you're not throwing a lot of punches, it could be round 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you're fighting someone like a Shakur Stevenson or a Devin Haney, they're a lot more sophisticated than guys like Rolly Romero. So you're going to be trailing behind on the scorecards and you're going to get frustrated. And it's going to be difficult. And you're going to get impatient, and then you're going to get counted, and you're going to start walking into shots. So although Tank Davis does take a few rounds to, kind of calculate his opponent, which he needs to do because he has the shorter and the smaller arms, he's got the inferior reach, he's at a disadvantage, it doesn't mean you shouldn't throw any punches and that you should be super duper inactive. He's got to, throw a little bit more punches. He's got to set things up a little bit more in the earlier rounds. Okay, I get it that, you don't want to get hit with anything silly. You don't want to get caught, but don't be super inactive. Be willing to engage and throw punches every now and again. Tank Davis on the outside earlier on in fights, he is way too inactive. And you're not going to be able to pull that off against Shakur Stevenson or a Devin Haney. But, yeah, great performance from Tank Davis in his recent fight. And remember, guys, I'm trying to talk about, the fighter's strengths and weaknesses here. I'm trying to figure out where these fighters can improve. So don't be a fanboy and start getting upset about me in the comment section below saying, oh, why are you saying that about my favorite fighter? I love Gervonta Davis. I love Devin Haney. I love Shakur Stevenson. I like all these guys too. I'm just talking about the landscape of the lightweight division, some of their strengths and weaknesses, and their recent performances, and what I saw, what I liked, what I didn't like. Now, Shakur Stevenson, he made his debut at 135 pounds against Yoshino. So Shakur in this fight looked phenomenal. Shakur Stevenson, in my opinion, is the most polished of the three. He makes the least mistakes. He's the best on the outside, and he's also very good on the inside. You've got Tank Davis, who isn't that good on the outside. He's tremendous on the inside. You've got Haney, who's very good on the outside. He needs to work on his inside game. But you've got Shakur Stevenson, who can literally block and deflect and, parry and roll punches on the inside and counter you. So Shakur is tremendous on the inside and the outside. He's got great balance, great coordination, great footwork. His distance control is fantastic. Shakur Stevenson has the best defense in all of boxing for me. The only thing about Shakur Stevenson is that he hasn't quite been tested. Shakur Stevenson hasn't actually showed any major weaknesses. I would say bar his punching power. He's not a big puncher. We know that. But the only caveat with Shakur Stevenson is that, as good as you are, eventually you're going to come up against someone who's going to test you. We saw it with Haney in the Linares fight and in the Lomachenko fight. Although Haney's performances haven't looked as polished as Tank Davis's and Stevenson, he's undoubtedly had the tougher fights and has the best resume by far. His resume is probably better than Stevenson's and Davis's put together, arguably, because the level of opposition, like Lomachenko is way better than anyone Shakur Stevenson has fought, and he's also way better than anyone Gervonta Davis has fought. Like, he's light years ahead of anyone those two have ever fought. So that's why I give props to Haney, because of his resume. But with Stevenson, eventually you're going to fight someone who's going to put you out of your comfort zone. How do you react? Look at Floyd Mayweather when he got stunned against Sugar Shane Mosley. Mayweather in the early rounds against what's his name? Zab Judah, very competitive fight. Even Mayweather in fights against Maidana, the first fight, it was tough. He had to get through those moments. He had to weather the storm. How will Shakur Stevenson react when he's under pressure legitimately for the first time in his career? Because if, these other guys in the lightweight division are as good as we think they are, they'll push Shakur Stevenson and they'll test his chin. They'll test his heart. They'll test his defense. One thing we know about Davis and Haney is that they've got a chin and they've got hearts, because we've seen them have to show a chin. We've seen Haney rocked and we've seen Haney recover. We've seen Gervonta Davis struggle earlier on in fights and come back later in fights. That shows a lot of intangible attributes that we haven't yet seen from Shakur Stevenson. And that's not Shakur's fault. Shakur Stevenson has just been flawless. When he did fight someone who was good, Oscar Valdez, Robson Conceição, they didn't really test his skills enough. That's not Shakur Stevenson's fault. Maybe he is just too good, and that, no one will ever bring him out of his comfort zone. But I doubt it. I do believe that eventually, at some point in his career, he'll be pushed to a next level, because that's what happens when the best fight the best. They really do push each other. Stevenson, he's looked the most polished. He hasn't showed any major weaknesses, let's say by his punching power, but he also hasn't had the level of opposition as Tank Davis and Devin Haney. So those are my thoughts on all three of their recent performances. Obviously, my interpretation of their strengths and weaknesses, what they need to work on, and so on and so forth. Let me know what you guys in the comment section think down below. Who will reign supreme out of the three kings of the lightweight division? Are you backing Devin Haney, the undisputed champion? Are you backing Shakur Stevenson, the guy who's just moved up? Or are you backing the power puncher Gervonta Tank Davis? Let me know. All right, guys. Peace.